Hey there, it's Carrie at StudioR12 Stencils, and today we are talking about stencil basics. So whether you're a newbie or just need a refresher, or maybe you just keep bleeding under, you're gonna wanna stay tuned. All right, guys, let's get started. First, let's talk about stencils in general. Here at StudioR12 Stencils, we use 7.5 mil Mylar. So you can get 5 mil, 7.5, or 10. We've tried them all. The 5 is kind of flimsy. The 10 is kind of thick, which leads to having ridges on your project. So we go with a 7.5, which we have found is the best one to use for your stenciling. Our stencils are reusable, they are washable. We'll have a video for you on that. And we also do something really cool so you can tell exactly which way your stencil goes. Now, if you're using words, then you can just look at the stencil and see what way your stencil goes. But if you're using a pattern stencil, and we have hundreds of those, we do a slight etching on our stencils so you can tell exactly which way it goes if you're going to repeat and repeat and repeat that pattern. All right, so let's get our stencil on our board. We are going to use a green stretchy tape. All of the products that we are using in today's project can be found below. Make sure you hit the show more button. When we tape off our projects, we like to do it in 2 spots. If you just do it on one side, you're gonna have a lot of movement. So we do it on one side, and then we go to the other side and tape off there too, so it's nice and snug and your stencil is not going to move. Okay, stencil is taped on and we are ready to paint. You can use a paper plate or you can use palette paper to put your paint on. We recommend using acrylic paint. Any good acrylic paint will do. We do want to let you know you're probably going to want to avoid the cheapest acrylic paint you can find. A lot of times that has water in it, which is going to make it a little runny, which can increase your chances of bleeding under on your projects. So you're going to use acrylic paint. You're going to put your acrylic paint onto your paper plate or your palette paper. Now, when you are deciding what paint colors you're going to want to use, we get questions about that all the time. Head over to Pinterest, do a little research, try to find some things that are pretty to you. Find pretty pictures and then use the same color palette on yours. Today, we're doing a basic white background with a pretty blue so you can really see the pop of our stenciling. Now, your brush is going to be one of the most important things when it comes to stenciling. A lot of people use a flat brush for stenciling. This is an old flat brush. It is straight across, and flat brushes can increase your chance of bleeding under because when you are stenciling with a flat brush, the whole brush is hitting your stencil and your project. Now, let's talk about the dome brush. The dome brush is actually dome-shaped all the way around so that when you are stenciling on your project, it is only going to hit the tip when you move it around. So just a little bit of the brush is actually hitting your project, which helps prevent bleeding under. If you bleed under, listen up. This is one of the most important things of this tutorial other than your brush. You are going to scoop a little bit of paint off of your palette paper, and then you're going to come to your paper towel and we are going to offload it, which means we are going to swirl 15 times. You don't have to count, about 15 times so that you can get off some of that excess paint. Once you do this, you can see when you come to your hand, it is just a really light dusting. It's not goopy, it's not really wet, and that is one of our tricks and secrets to stenciling. So then we're going to come to our project and we are going to do a light swirl on our project. There are a couple different ways that you can stencil. You can swirl like we are now, and it's going to give you a really light, dusty layer of paint. This is the way that you are going to prevent bleeding under. Now let me show you the other way. The other way is stippling. And notice every time that we get paint on our brush, we are going to come back to our paper towel so we can offload some of that paint. The other way is stippling. Stippling is a patting motion where you are going to tap, tap, tap onto your surface. And you can notice once we stipple versus once we swirl, the stippling is going to give you a deeper, darker paint on your project from the get-go. So let's take a look at this. So at the very top, we used our swirling, which gave us a really light dusting, compared to our stippling, which made it a little bit darker. Let's come back here, and I'm going to do just a little bit more to show you how it looks after we get another layer on top here. So depending on the size of your project, you also might want to consider using a blow dryer. So we keep one here on our table to use at any time. So between layers, you might want to blow dry so that you can make sure that your paint on your project is dry before you go back to it. If your paint is still wet, when you go back, you are going to potentially get patchy areas because wet paint attracts wet paint, and then you'll start to notice a little bit of holes in your paint. Painting, stenciling is super fun. It's super easy. It doesn't have to be hard, and you can have beautiful projects that look professional, even if you don't think you're artistic. So let's take a look at what this looks like and how easy and simple it was to do our swirling motion. So you can see here, this was 2 coats of paint. This is 1 coat of paint, and we had no bleeding under. If you enjoyed today's tutorial, be sure to subscribe and then ring the bell so you can be notified anytime we add new tips, tricks, and tutorials. And be sure to hit the show more below so you can see all of the products we used for today's project.